Hey guys, Darren Kai, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another Captain's episode heading into round 16, the final bye round of the year. And it's going to be an interesting round of captains as we have some major captain options out this week on the bye. We don't have the safety of Bailey Smith this week, unfortunately, with him out with the bye. Also, Nick Martin, he's been a very reliable captain in the past couple of weeks with his ceiling. Zorko, if you've gone there, Whitfield, I know he's injured at the moment, but he's been a very viable option as well. Then you also have the likes of Ash and the Brisbane boys as well. So a lot of options that we typically rely on for our captains are not here this week. So it means we're going to get pretty creative with our options. But don't worry, I've got plenty of big captains that I think are going to be very viable this week. But before we get into those captains, quickly look at how I went last week. So I scored a ranked 82 last week with a 1645. I was one of the fortunate coaches that didn't have Lockie Whitfield in my top 5 captains, so that did help out my score a fair bit. But that also meant that I moved up in the rankings overall a fair bit. I think I jumped up from 8th to 4th, and now really closing in on those top guys. So very happy to be in the top 5 now. That's sort of where my goal was. We'll see how we go throughout the remainder of the season if I can hunt down those top guys. But yeah, ultimately, I'm very happy with how I am, where I am at the moment. Yeah, bit surprising. I wasn't expecting to be here, but looking at how the scores went last week, wasn't the greatest. Particularly, I myself went Brayshaw into Smith. They let me down a fair bit, but to back Bont to bounce back with that after that pretty bad score the week prior to get 120, I'm pretty happy at their number 2. Tim English, I probably should have had a bit more faith in with a very nice matchup. Put up that 138. Definitely should have been higher, but I'm still happy he was in my top 5 there. And Bailey Dale, let me down a fair bit with just spending too much time on the bench. I think he spent the last 15 minutes on the bench in that game, so bit unlucky there. But at the end of the day, only one times there, so that's fine. But yeah, that's how I went last week. Let's get into the options this week. So I think it's pretty straightforward. As much as I say there's a lot of major options out, by now you have a complete team pretty much, and you're going to have 22 very valid options of captaincy. So while we've got some big troops down, we've got some big ones standing up, and none bigger than the likes of Jordan Dawson this week. He's back off of the bye, fully rested, and up against the nicest matchup you can ask for in the Richmond Tigers. Now, this could be anywhere from a 110 to a 170. We know how big Jordan Dawson can go when all the elements come together because he is a ball magnet in the middle, but he also does all the great stuff with the marks overhead, the tackling, and even going forward and kicking a fair few goals. So I really like him as an option. If you're rolling into him as a C, it's a big question mark around what your line is. I'm thinking it's closer to 130, if not even 140. I'll be playing around with how I feel with that as the weekend goes on, depending on how my team's sort of structured up, or if there's some poor scores throughout the round, if I'm getting not the greatest vibe with rolling into him. But he's going to be my captain this week. It's just whether I take the VC ahead of him or not. But he went 124 against Richmond last year, and we know Richmond have been giving up some major big points to midfielders throughout this season. There's been a couple 140s in there, plenty of 110s, so it should be a walk-up 110 for him. It's just how big is the ceiling for him. I don't think there's going to be any concerns in terms of resting him. Obviously, they've just come straight off the bye, so that should be null and void. It would be a pretty weird scenario if they were resting him straight off the bye with against this matchup. So I'm expecting him just to get really going, keep his boys up and firing as they start to head towards the finals and trying to finish in the top 4. So big tick for him at my number 1. Number 2 is going to be my VC, and I think this is where a lot of people will be going as well, and that is Nick Dayos. He had a big 131 against West Coast last year, and he's played West Coast 3 times in his career so far. He's played them once every single year, and he's averaging 123 against them so far, or nearly 124. So he loves playing West Coast. Obviously, throughout his career, West Coast have been pretty poor, and that hasn't changed this year. So I'm expecting a big game from him. So realistically, this should be another 120, 130 walk-up for him. He's probably more of a safer captain than Jordan Dawson in that sense, but I just feel like the ceiling of Jordan Dawson is probably a bit higher than what a Dayos is, just with the tackling pressure and whatnot around the ground a bit more, whereas Dayos has more just get accumulated, get as much ball in hand, and not really getting the other marks and tackles as much. So just think the ceiling's a lot higher for a Jordan Dawson. I think we're due for a 170. So I like the ceiling of Jordan Dawson there at number 1. But Nick Dayos, he's a very safe captain and he's a good VC. I'll be going there again. It will just be the line of what's the line and what I'm willing to take, because I do think a Nick Dayos could be a decent 130, if not even a 140. So that'll be interesting to see. But we know West Coast have been giving up plenty of big points again in the midfield. There's very limited tags. I don't think there's going to be a tag option at all. So he should be running free and should be able to do his best around the ground and kick some goals as well. He'll also be thriving after the Windhager tag last week. So he'll be loose and he'll be able to get the ball a fair bit. So here's my number 2. And I think a lot of people will be going there. Number 3 is the man that I'll be trading in this week, and that is Brody Grundy. It's undeniable how big he has been going with his form recently. He's just been unreal. And he's up against the likes of Tim English, who Tim English has been a bit of an up and down sort of ruckman this year in terms of a matchup, but in his last couple, he's been giving up a fair few points. I can probably even show you that here. If I quickly go to that, I should have had it up already. I do apologise. Where is he? Western Bulldogs, if I can find it. So in the last couple, so looking at the main guys, right? So you got Royal Marshall, he went 129 against him only 2 weeks ago. Lloyd Meek went 120 as well, whether you classify him as a big guy or not, but he got the job done. It was really only Toby Nankervis in the last couple that has been a bit of a poorer one, but I think Brody Grundy with his form and with the likes of Sydney playing a bit better, I think he can get the job done. He also scored a 119 and a 109 against him last year when we know Brody Grundy wasn't at his peak of his powers. So again, this could be a very big score for Brody Grundy with his form and with how they're going. Back at the SCG, it could be a very nice one. So here's there at number 3 for me. And is a very, very viable option if you want to have a early VC, especially on the Friday night. So have a think about that. Number 4, I have Tristan Cherry. So there's a big theme in here. I've got a lot of big boys in here. So Tristan Cherry, he's been a bit poor in the last 4 weeks particularly, but I'm expecting with a bit of a better matchup against Lloyd Meek, he should have a much better round. Hawthorn are liking to be a bit more contested, so I'm thinking it's going to be a very contested game, meaning a lot of tackles. Hawthorn have been pretty poor by hand and by foot, so that means Tristan Cherry's going to be able to get that little tackle away and just get the turnover, so he gets those more tackles. We saw Tim English go 139, Darcy Cameron 109, and Max Gorman at 113, so I'm expecting a very similar score in that sort of range of a 120 is in his capability. So if you're struggling for captaincy options, he is a decent captain option there, playing the 4th game of the round. Unfortunately, he does play before the likes of Dawson and Dayos, so he could be a decent VC option if you don't have anyone else on this list or you're looking at someone else. I'd probably prefer to go that way, but he scored a 129, a 126 and a 109 against Lloyd Meek last year, so he loves playing against Hawks. And the final one I have in my top 5 is someone that a lot of people are going with, and that is Darcy Cameron. Not that he's super fantasy relevant, but he has been a very informed ruckman so far this year. He only scored the 91 against them last year, but very different scenario than this year. We have seen some very big scores against the West Coast ruckman, whether that it's both Bailey Williams and Matt Flynn, or one of them, it doesn't matter. They get the job done. So TDK went 109, Tristan Cherry went 111 before that, and even before that, a bit earlier in the season, we saw Riley O'Brien went 128. I'm trying to think of these names now. Where is it? Sorry, I just jumped ahead. Lloyd Meek 131, Max Gawn 138, and obviously Royal Marshall 138 as well. So this could be anywhere from a 105 to 150, I think, for Darcy Cameron. So he's very safe in there. But I'm just thinking I put him a bit lower than what he probably should be, just for the fact that it's the number one ranked team versus a lower team. I just realized I'm not wearing my hat. It's a very low ranked team in West Coast, so I'm just thinking they're going to get out of the middle very quickly into the forward line, kick goal, or lock it down in the forward line a fair bit. So I just don't know if he's going to get it around the ground as much as what we expect. I do think that it's going to slaughter West Coast fairly easily. So not sure he's going to be able to get the ball around the ground as much as what we're probably used to. So I'll put him down there just a little bit, just for that fact that could cap his possibility just a little bit. So that is my top 5. I'll continue on my rest of my top 5, but please let me know if you think I've missed anyone that should be a worthwhile option in my top 5. But for the bottom 5 here, number 6, I have the likes of Connor Rozee. Now, I've missed out on him as my top 5 just because I'm a little bit concerned with the Chin-Cotta tag, but he does play tonight, so if you're struggling for captain options, you could throw an easy VC on him. He has been a very solid option for the last 2 months, where he's gone into this halfback role. Whether he plays halfback or plays in the midfield, I don't think it really matters. He gets the job done, and he should be a very viable option. He only scored the 75 against Carlton last year, but Carlton have been a bit in shambles recently, obviously losing to North Melbourne last week, so they are becoming a bit of an easier matchup, and they are starting to bring in some newer blood, so that could only mean they're going to become a bit of an easier matchup. So I'm thinking that's good things for Connor Rozee, and again, he has been such a stable 105, 110 sort of guy over the last couple months, so he should bounce back from that poor game last week where he was getting a bit of attention. Number 7, I have Nosaya Wanganeen-Alira. It's undeniable how good this form has been over the last, particularly 4 weeks, but even longer that all season. He's just getting it done. Although Freo are a bit of a tougher matchup for designated kick-out players, and I could see a potential tag coming his way from, a Wagner or something like that. There's no doubt that Nosaya is their best ball user and most damaging player, so I could easily see a Wagner going to him and just doing a bit of stoppage work there at half forward for them. So I'm a bit concerned if you were going to go there, and unfortunately it is the last game of the round, so you would have to throw the straight C on him. I'm not sure if I'm quite there with having that comfortability with him at this stage. So for those reasons, he is down a little bit ways down with number 7. But again, should be a viable option. He scored just a 103 earlier in the year when when St Kilda thumped Freo in that very unusual game by 60 points. So a little bit disappointing, I would say, with a 103 when they thumped him. So he's there at number 7. Number 8 is Andrew Brayshaw. Again, he's been a star midfielder so far this year. Up against St Kilda, which on paper is a bit of a tougher matchup. I think a lot of that data is a bit skewed though, with obviously a lot of tags coming from Windhager, so obviously their best midfielder typically gets a pretty bad score. So with Windhager assumingly going to the likes of Sarong, I do think Brayshaw gets off pretty lightly and can get around the ground and do the hard work to cover for Sarong. He only had the 78 though early in the year with that really poor game back in round 8 where Freo got pumped. And pretty much no Freo player scored. But I don't think any Freo player scored over like 90. So to score a 78 is not too bad. I do expect Freo to bounce back a lot better than what they performed early in the year. They've found a little bit more form and found the way that they want to play a little bit better, which is a bit more possession football and sometimes go a bit slower. So I do think Brayshaw can get on the right end of a few things. He doesn't mind to be able to go back and take a few marks off the halfback as well when he needs to, and I do think that's what St Kilda do allow a fair bit, so I think Brayshaw could get off the chain. If you were to go with a solid C option, I do think he's pretty stable there, and he has a ceiling to go big as well, so I like him at number 8. Number 9, his teammate in Luke Jackson. It's hard to deny this man after what he put up last week, but he's up against Rowan Marshall, who has been a bit of an easier matchup, to be honest. It's not on, he's been a bit of an easy matchup for a little while, particularly while he's been underperforming, just not really getting it done. Trying to find his matchup here. Where is St Kilda? There he is. So the last 10 is 2.63 points better, and we have seen the likes of, Darcy Cameron go 128, Tim English go 120, a Max Gawn go 103, a Jared Witts go 107 and a 103, even Tom De Koning 104, Oscar McInerney 104. So he has been giving up a fair few points to these ruckmen, but as you can see here, Jackson only went with the 66 last time they came around, but again, that was that really poor game where they got pumped, and obviously that was with Sean Darcy in the side. Now, I'm not sure if Sean Darcy plays this week or not. This is obviously before teams come out on the Thursday, so we'll have to wait and see how that comes out, but I think either way, Luke Jackson's either playing as mostly ruck or he's playing as a ruck rover in the midfield anyway, and I think that can allow him to get a fair few points and put up a very solid score anyway. So I'm liking him as a decent option if you're looking for a bit more of a unique option there with his current form. Going back to the page, my number 10 spot has to go to the likes of Josh Dayos. I was going to say Dunkley for some reason, but Josh Dayos up against West Coast. It's a very easy matchup. Josh Dayos has been a very solid sort of 95 to 110 sort of guy for most of this season. Just hasn't really found that ceiling yet. But in saying that, he did go 120 against West Coast last year in this matchup. So could easily see him doing that quite easily. So yeah, I wouldn't mind going into him if you needed to as a captaincy, but he's a little bit ways down. That is my top 10. Again, let me know who you think I've missed out on here. Obviously, there's a few options I didn't talk about. Max Gawn is probably one of them that I just think the Wits option against him, if Wits isn't named, then obviously he gets skyrocketed into the top 5, I'd say. That's just a no-brainer. But with a tougher matchup against Wits, typically means he's not going to score well. I think he only scored like an 80 early in the year. So I'm expecting that sort of typical score. So I just don't see him having that ceiling 120 in him this week. So that's why he's out of the top 10 this week. Marcus Bontempelli up against Sydney. I just think Sydney have sort of found their mojo a little bit, and I think it could be a bit of a tougher matchup for him. He hasn't had the best history against Sydney in the past. I think last year he only had like a low score with like I think it was like a sub 9, just over a 90 or something like that. So it wasn't too bad, but wasn't the greatest. But the year before that, I think he did go like a 140, but that's a very different scenario to now. I don't like to look too far back because teams change so quickly. You know, Sydney last year was a top performing team, nearly undefeatable, but the year before that, they weren't as good. So, yeah, it bobs and flows a fair bit. So I'm just not sure I'm super confident with him being my captain option. Probably hasn't shown that massive ceiling that we're looking for just yet. So for those sort of reasons, I think we have much better options that have this ceiling this week. So not really looking at him in my top 10. Noah Anderson just missed out on my top 10. He's up against Melbourne. He scored a 117 against them earlier this year, so is a definitely viable option if you wanted to go that way. He plays his first game on Saturday, so if you want to throw a cheeky PC on him, I don't mind it. My only concern is that I think the likes of an Oliver could go to him as a bit of a tagging option, or even a Viney. But I just think a Viney probably goes to Petracca, and then Oliver probably goes to Noah Anderson if they were going to do a bit of a tagging job there. Did I say that right? I think I said that right. Yeah, maybe. I can't remember. Sorry, no. Viney probably goes to Rao. I think I said Petracca for some reason. Viney goes to Rao, and then Oliver can go to Anderson, and that means Petracca can roam free and hopefully get his job done. So, speaking of Petracca, he's probably a very valid option as well. He's up against the Suns, and that is the best matchup for midfielders particularly. I just don't think he has that ceiling for me. He can probably put up a 120, but he probably hasn't shown much more than that. So I'm just not 100% certain that he'd be one I'd be comfortable with. I just don't think we're looking at too many guys in the forward line this week for captaincies realistically. But Noah Anderson, if you're looking at him, it's definitely a viable option, but again, could get tagged. Butters, I'm just not sure. He can obviously go big, no doubt about that, but we saw from last week he can get shut down very simply with some attention. So he could get attention from a George Hewitt this week, or even a Chincotta if they're looking for someone with a bit more a run and dash. So for those sort of reasons, I just haven't included him. I think I spoke about most of these guys. Caleb Sarong's getting attention from a Windhager, most assumingly. Sheasel, I just still don't have the most confidence with his role. He's just not certain to be around the ball as much as if he was off halfback. I still think he's a great fantasy player, but just with the ceiling, I'm not 100% sure he's got that in spades as a half forward there. So I'm just avoiding that. TDK is definitely a possible option if you're an owner. He could be a viable VC option against Port Adelaide tonight against obviously the ruckman there for Port. So great matchup if you're an owner. It's a very unique one. Obviously the likes of Pinnet got dropped, so yeah, he's solo ruck again. So could put up a very decent one, but I don't think he's very highly owned. So, but I think they'll finish it off. I don't want to make this too long. Captains are meant to be pretty quick, but just a quick recap of what I'm doing this week. So this is my team. I will be going the VC from Dayos into Dawson. I'm thinking a VC line of 130, if not 140, but I'll see how I sort of feel throughout the week. Hopefully it's going to be on the higher end of that. In terms of my trades, I have just reverted back to my old trades. I'm pretty comfortable with this now. I'm going to get rid of Josh Dunkley, even though it doesn't feel correct. Just backing the information that I can see that he has a bad run. He's been performing badly. He's not hunting the ball and all those sort of things. So I'm just happy to jump on a Brody Grundy, who I expect to be big for the remainder of the year. It fixes up my structure a little bit by putting Jackson back into my forward line. But that means I'm getting Liddy as my as a downgrade option. And currently I have Billy Wilson in here. He may or may not stay depending on how teams get announced this week. If I find a better option at a basement rookie, then I may go there. But pretty much I'm just trying to bank as much coin as possible so I have enough money to go from the likes of a Finn O'Sullivan and potentially a Loman up to a big dog, whether that's a Stewart or a $1 million price guy, to be my final premium on field and get my 22. So currently I still have 21. But yeah, that's how we're structuring up. I'm only playing the 20 this week with two guys in my forward line on the bye, which is a bit unfortunate, but I'm pretty comfortable with that. I've got 18 very solid scores, plus then a McCarthy as a backup. And then obviously I'm looping between, a Billy Wilson, a Liddy, and a Finn O'Sullivan as sort of that last rookie on field. So best 18 really isn't best 18 when you're able to loop against your guys on the bye. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with how I feel about my team this week, and hopefully can finish off the buys pretty strong, as I have halved my ranking so far this year, and can hopefully continue rising up the ranks this week. But all the best, guys. If you have any questions, please leave them below. If you want to have a personalized question, go see my Q link as always. Besides that, have a great weekend, guys, and I will catch you next weekend. Cheers. Bye.